Hello, everyone. So sorry for the delay, but oh my gosh, has this week been insane for Harry and Meghan? Of course, we had the gigantic announcement that the couple are officially returning to the UK, despite living in the US for 6 years, having a lot of businesses in the US, but they're moving back to the UK. Harry's probably going to be a cosplay royal, like professionally. Don't know quite how that's going to work. Meghan Markle is apparently returning to acting. That is the big headline today. Apparently going to be maybe in the season three of the show The Gentleman, even though the season 2 has not debuted yet. And there is no confirmation that there will be a season 3 of The Gentleman. So we do have that popping off as well. We got Harry at a military event, Harry laying a wreath at Arlington National Cemetery. Again, I don't know why people keep letting Harry mock our war dead by having him perform. I don't understand. It blows my mind. We have the Royals up at Balmoral having a shooting party and probably getting out some of their untapped rage at the pheasants or whatever they're shooting. So I think that's probably healthy and productive, I would imagine. And just so many things. I actually have a list because like things keep changing by the hour. So we have also Charles's promise to William, the belief that proximity will fix all problems. And can Harry really keep his mouth shut? So again, this has been the week of complete and utter royal chaos. And it's just a reminder of why Harry and Meghan are the worst when it comes to the royal family and why the royal family doesn't want them there. They are a 3-ring circus. This is the Circus of Sussex. And once it rolls into town, it's impossible to ignore how crazy things are going to get here. I feel sorry for Catherine and William. I don't know if I necessarily feel sorry for Charles because I think this is probably partly his doing the problem. Feel sorry for the rest of the royals who are attempting to just have a life. Then we also have all the employees of the royal palace who are now going to have to deal with Harry and Meghan constantly trying to, in real time, intercepting various royal events and trying to steal headlines. This fall is going to be wild, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be absolutely wild. We also have a report from, I'm not familiar with it, but it seems like some sort of news outlet that said that Harry and Meghan have sent a thing to the press going, well, we're going to court attention, as you know, but don't you dare share anything about our personal life and where our kids are going to school or where we're living. You can't share that. And I'm like, but you guys are courting attention. And unfortunately, when you court attention, you court a lot of different type of attention. Like, this is insane. You can't play this game anymore. This game doesn't work. This game is obnoxious. And so many different things. So welcome to the afternoon tea. The afternoon tea this week is hot, beyond hot. We'll get into a lot of the questions. I know there's a lot of, may try to have a bit more time for more questions and stuff, because I think there are so many people wondering what kind of all this means. I did a video kind of breaking that down. So if you haven't seen that yet, that video was posted yesterday. And yes, I did technically post it twice because I was trying to see if a different thumbnail would do a bit better. I was trying to mix things up and it kind of worked and it kind of didn't. But this whole thing with Harry and Meghan is just going to be months and months and months of chaos. It's going to be months and months of figuring out where everybody stands, how people are doing, what's Harry doing, what's Meghan doing. And not because the royals want to deal with this. When Harry and Meghan were in the US, you could ignore them and just go out about your daily life. You can't ignore them anymore. There's just no way to ignore them because they're on your front door. So like what are Catherine and William supposed to do? Their status of kind of going about life and trying to avoid the chaos of Harry and Meghan is just not going to work when Harry and Meghan are in their own backyard. And then you have the added trouble of Catherine and William looking cold and heartless if they don't interact with the Sussexes or the Sussexes kids. And like so many different things here, guys, are all culminating in this one bit of absolute chaos when it comes to Harry and Meghan. And so definitely, yeah, so much here going on, so much shocking bits. It's hard almost to keep up. And the thing is, I had like other things I wanted to do this week. And now that everything's totally shot. Because I think, again, there's really interesting things to compare between Meghan Markle and Jason Arday. And another aspect we haven't talked about much. And I don't really care about following the Sussex squad, so I don't really give a crap. But I think they're having a bit of a meltdown because they don't know what to do with this. Meghan Markle and Harry have told them and sold them a lie for years that the British monarchy was terrible and horrible, and that the British people were terrible and horrible. The British press was terrible and horrible. The country of the UK was terrible and horrible, and they are living their best life in California, only to pack up and go back to the UK. Like, even among their fans, they've alienated people. This is just a series of catastrophically dumb decisions by Harry and Meghan that reek of absolute desperation, and it will only go badly for them in the long run, because it's just obvious they're doing this because other things are going badly in Hollywood. Even if Meghan Markle is going to become a quote unquote actress again, it's the result of things going poorly as a producer. I think there was one article that I saw cited that said that she decided that, oh, it is kind of nicer to have somebody else do like all the work. Like, that feels very Meghan Markle, doesn't it? That she's like, yeah, it's a kind of great that somebody else does all the work and I don't have to do the work. That just seems apt and perfect because she doesn't want to do the work. But I've seen actually the Guy Ritchie show. Again, we'll get into it. That I've seen at least part of it, like the first episode. I think just the first episode. It just didn't really grab me. I've seen the first episode of that show, and it's sort of witty and fast-paced and kind of very Guy Ritchie. And I just don't even know if Meghan can keep up with that. I've seen her acting. It's pretty gosh darn bad. So, guys, we are going to get into everything. We may have to react to breaking news in real time because, again, there's so much breaking news. But before we get into that, we did have some super chats and new members. So I just did want to go over that real quick. We have EG Savvy. Hey, EG Savvy became a YouTube member. Thank you so much. We also have Christine Gilbert, 1848, became a YouTube member. Why, thank you so much, Christine. That is so incredibly awesome. We have John Masood, Brittany, our dear. Thank you also so much for the super chat. You're the coolest. I'm wondering how Harold Markle can afford paying Daily Mail legal bills. Yes, we do have to cover that too. I think I mentioned that. So we do have to cover Harry's court case loss, which is huge. That the Daily Mail can now seek out all, and I mean all of the costs that associated with that trial is pretty massive. Now, he is covered partly by insurance, but because he and the other co-claimants, like the judge basically said, this was a stupid lawsuit. I can't believe you brought it. You had no basis for this. You brought this in knowing you would lose. And so because of that, that changes the whole parameters of what can be sought. So he's definitely not fully covered. So we'll get into the finances of that. We can also thank you so much, Carol, as well for the super chat. We also have Christine here, get to One Real News Network membership, and so did Carol. And then we have Shaz 1769. Shaz, somebody was wondering where you were recently. Said thank you, Brittany, for all your reporting on this absolutely shocking Harry and Meghan news. You are so incredibly welcome. We also have Carol saying Charles is enabling the chaos of Harry and Meghan. Where's the loyalty for the heir and all the other working members of the royal family? Rival court in real time. Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you so much for the super chat. And that was like the subject of yesterday's video. This rival court situation is it's going to be worse. Obviously, Spain has a little bit of that too because of the ousting of Juan Carlos. Juan Carlos, I think, still having a lot of support. So does Queen Sonia. Some people don't like Felipe and Letizia, and more specifically Letizia. They prefer sort of Sophia, because I think they think Sophia is conservative and stuff. Letizia is more liberal and feminist, and they don't like that. So there's a lot of competing dynamics there in Spain. But, and if you don't know, the king's other sister, so he has two sisters. One of them, she was actually brought before a prosecution because her husband actually spent time in jail for like tax evasion. So he doesn't really associate. I mean, I think he's still friendly with, but he doesn't really associate with. Basically, it's just his immediate family. So Letizia, Leonor, and Sophia. He doesn't really associate with his sisters or his nieces and nephews all that much anymore, at least publicly. And so it seems like there's a bit of the rival court of Sophia led with the daughters and Felipe with the actual court. But the difference here is for Harry and Meghan is that Harry and Meghan are going to be active disruptors. They're not going to, let's say, be there and be in the periphery and obviously be a little bit of a separate royal court. They will be actively disruptive. This goes back to like freaking medieval times, guys, and you have rival courts trying to jockey for power. Like, this is what it's going to be. Like, we're going medieval here. Maybe I should label that the title of the video. It's going to get medieval, y'all. And this is not, again, constructive for the British monarchy. And I feel like we're going to have another instance of Charles just going, well, let's see how this plays out. No, please stop doing that. That hasn't worked. We have Christine Gilbert for the super chat. Thank you so much, saying, I'll be here for it. Lots of popcorn. Yes, we have Christine gifted 1 Royal News Network membership. Thank you so much, Christine. We have Lizzie B. Thank you so much for the super chat, saying the Prince and Princess of Wales are being cautious of the 2 people who have said too many lies, have hurt them, and broken their trust in public and in private. Exactly. It'll be fascinating to see how Catherine and William deal with this, because they will be forced to interact with Harry and Meghan in public, whether it's Christmas, Standing Hymn Walk, or together at Christmas. They can't afford not to invite Harry and Meghan. They're going to have to. We may have Trooping the Color at some point. That might come up if Harry especially becomes a working royal. And Easter would be the other sort of big one. And so those type of events, like, it's going to be really hard to navigate, because you don't want to be seen as rude, but you also know Sussexes can't keep confidences, so you can't have a decent conversation with them. So it just becomes really problematic very quickly for Catherine and William. I feel for them. I'm sure they're in their room at Balmoral right now, strategizing, trying to figure out with their team what the heck they're going to do. Because again, this will not be an easy tightrope to walk. Lola, thank you so much for the super chat from Sweden. I was actually, I think, looking at pictures from Sweden the other day. The Swedish krona says today in Gothenburg, post a Swedish newspaper, that Meghan is going to work like an actor. Is that true? Thank you. It seems so. It seems so. Again, we'll get into the acting news because I got thoughts about that. But yes, it seems very true. The Gentleman is apparently the show that is being cited as one Meghan will join. So if it gets renewed for season 3, season 2 has yet to premiere. Diz fan, thank you so much for the super chat. Also said nearly 48 hours and still can't wrap my head around it. This is worse than Brexit. It kind of sort of is. I will be honest. It kind of sort of is. It feels very chaotic. And in some ways, I want to do a video that will launch tomorrow. Haven't filmed it. I'm actually working right now, guys, on a video looking at Meghan's horrid royal fashion, because that's probably going to be back. And, her first time with a hat, she chose a poop emoji for a hat. So that's going to be fun. But at least you could kind of, like, Harry and Meghan stepping away, like, you kind of understood it in a way. This you understand too. In fact, honestly, one of my videos about Harry and Meghan moving to Portugal, that's the title of the video, actually has aged very well now. Because one of the things I said is a lot of productions are moving to the UK. So they may want to base themselves in Portugal for ease to UK productions. And that's not quite. I didn't get quite everything right, but I was pretty on the money. And some people thought I was crazy, but I was pretty on the money. So we're definitely kind of in the twilight zone. This is going to be, again, a very chaotic situation to see how all this plays out. But I think it's very clear that things didn't work in Hollywood the way Harry and Meghan wanted them to. Meghan didn't want to be an actress again because I think she's smart enough to know she really sucks at it. But she decided, yeah, I'm going to have to go back. All right, Mystica Rose gifted 5 Royal News Network memberships. Thank you so much, Mystica Rose. I'm sure people in the chat are absolutely loving it. And we also have you making a comment. It's been a year. Much has happened in that time. So incredibly much. And again, I think I didn't finish with Diz fan saying, I'm going to go back through and look at kind of the signs that Harry and Meghan were adjusting to potentially make this move. And I think them folding Archwell Foundation is a symptom of that. Now, I will say, I don't think this was a plan. In terms of the long-term strategy wasn't, we'll go to the US for 5 years and then we'll come back. I don't think that was his plan or strategy. I think the failure was so great that they had to go in this direction. So that's my thought. But let's go ahead and get into the acting news first, because I feel like that's the more, let's say, apt news of the day, more shocking in a weird way, but not. And I'm really curious. I watch guys who, I actually watched The Gentleman because a YouTuber recommended the show, and I watched it and I was like, it just didn't do much for me. It's not really my style. And here's the funny thing, if this is truly the project, and it seems like everybody's going with this, so it must have validity, that Meghan for this particular project is a little odd. I say that because I think Meghan would generate an audience in a female type show, a romantic comedy or something like that. This is about a guy who, if I remember right, he inherits some sort of English estate that sells weed. And so, or something to that effect. I can't remember, some sort of drug. And so he kind of gets roped into this drug world. And I only really watched the first episode because again, it didn't really do much for me overall. But this just doesn't seem a type of show. Like if you're going to do sun casting, which somebody has suggested, Megan would be a horrible option for this show. She would not be somebody who would actually generate interest in her performance. Again, a romantic comedy, yes, but not this type of show. This type of show is violent, a lot of cursing, and it would and it's driven towards men. And I'm sorry, but Meghan Markle, she ain't that sexy. She's really not. She's like, I don't mean to be rude. She's kind of flat as a pancake, doesn't have much shape. It's pretty, but not that pretty. So, like, I just don't see her being somebody who could walk in and really dominate this show, not to mention the fact she can't act. She's really not a great actress. So in that respect, she I don't think if you brought her on, she is not a benefit to this production. It's something like what was it? They had a show on Netflix called like Magnolia. There was Virgin River. I think those type of shows would be a great one for Megan because she she attracts more females and that's the thing. I just don't think the guys are all that interested. She's also a woman in her 40s. Again, she doesn't really she's never really had the sex appeal. Like if some guys find her sexy, that's fine. Everybody has their taste. But I don't think she is a big draw and would be a big draw for like a male audience. This is a male type show, at least from what I remember. Now, granted, I kind of enjoy stuff like that, but it just again didn't appeal to me. Maybe I should get a bit more time because I'm curious how she would even work. Because Megan can act Megan, and that's about it. That's the extent of her acting range. She hasn't acted in years as well. And so it's like, this just seems like a really kind of a big leap here. And the funny thing is too, is that the the show doesn't need it. So the show, if you didn't know, I actually looked it up. It debuted as number 4 in 2024 in the first half of 2024, in the first round of its release. It got 75, basically 76 million views. So it did very well. So I don't know why they would need to hire Megan. The show did well. Like if season 2 does well, why do you need stunt casting with Meghan Markle? Like Meghan Markle is stunt casting you do when you're wanting to generate buzz. Now, what's interesting here and what to consider is that this show debuts on September 3rd, like the second season. So this could be all fluff because they don't have a season 3 yet. This could be all fluff. And if it gets renewed for season 3, maybe they don't pick them up Megan. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it generated enough buzz anyways for people to tune in. But Megan is not a Megan does not convert. We have seen this endlessly. You have endless examples of that point where if you connect Meghan Markle to something, it does not do well. You may get a little bit of an interest, but it doesn't do well. But this is the interesting thing too. So in a way, Megan could play herself kind of well here. Because yeah, she herself, like if she's attached to a project, people either tune in or out, but she's not the star of this. This quite handsome man is right here. I can't remember his name. He's quite handsome. He's the star. And so yeah, he's I want to say it's like starts with a T or something. I think he's very cute. So he is the star of the show. And so he's the one who is going to draw. So she could attach herself to an already successful show. And yes, maybe her stunt casting maybe helps a bit in the ratings. Again, I just don't think so. Imagine I actually have Theo. Asma said Theo. That's right. Theo James. Yeah. I think he's got quite a handsome manly bone structure. Anyways, so attaching Megan to a project that's already successful, if it's successful again, she can like claim victory laps and claim it's successful, but we also know that if she's individually attached to something with nothing else drawing people in, she's box office poison. She doesn't help. So in this particular instance, and it was funny too, there's a woman who has shown up a couple of times on my X feed, and one of the things she said is like, "There's not a lot of good actors out there." And I'm like, "No, there are quite a lot of good actors out there. That's how they become actors." How else do you think they become actors? They're generally fairly good at it. She's also difficult to work with, difficult to work for. Yeah, Sharon Wright says, which is true. She's not a team player. I just don't know how good she would be in something like this. And it's kind of a hard, fast show, at least from what I recall. Again, really violent and stuff. And that's kind of Guy Ritchie style, not complaining about that whatsoever. But again, that does not mesh with her brand at all. Like, think about it. She has, for the last year, has done homemaking stuff. She's done homemaking stuff. Like, she's done like frilly and girly things. And then all of a sudden she's going to be in this violent mob show. I'm like, the Venn diagram just doesn't work for the type of audience she's tried to generate, especially with As Ever and stuff. Again, this goes back to she jumps on anything without really thinking about, like, she just is after the money or the attention or the fame and the fortune and what have you. And it's not really thinking about, does this work for my brand? Does this work for the image I'm attempting to cultivate? Will this help or will this hurt? And at this point, maybe she's gonna try to go in a totally different direction with her career, but to what end? And if she is in a show, especially Theo James, I think from what I remember is quite a good actor. I think most of the people in that show are. Like, when she's with people who have actual acting chops, like, she'll look all the worse. And I think some people in the Suits show were quite good. But Megan was just, at least from even the first episode I saw, was among the weakest. From everything I've seen of her, she's very weak actress. I remember the one thing I've seen overall from her is obviously Fringe, because I watched Friends. I enjoyed Fringe. I enjoyed that, like, the first season, and then it kind of cratered because they didn't really have a good plan. And that's why, like, complex shows, you actually have to have a plan for how you want to go and where you want to go and how you want to end it. You can't just go, "Oh, we'll figure it out later." No, you have to have a plan. Fringe is another example of how you created a great concept with zero plan for how to end it, and it just kind of went a mess. Anyways, so her character is in the first 2 episodes of season 2. And they are very, very much setting her up to be a series regular or a guest star or something. Like, they were very much setting her up in that first episode in that light. That's what they were doing. And so in the first episode, she was involved quite a bit. She went to the lab where they worked. She interacted with basically every one of the main characters. So they were very much seeing if she fit. And it was probably both, she wasn't a good fit. She's probably difficult to work with. And so they brought her in, and then they had her do all these things. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're done." Second episode, she's hardly in it. It was obviously, she was meant to be somebody who joined the main cast, and they just totally cut her out. And that is, I think, indicative very much of a lot of Megan's career. Is that she's just not good. And I think too, when it comes to British actors, now this isn't everyone, but British actors generally have to go through a bit more of a rigorous, let's say, training process, especially older British actors. Like, you had to actually, like, to be really an actor, you had to do the West End. You had to do plays. You had to really build up your repertoire of stuff in order to be successful. And that's why, like, they're so, like, British actors tend to be amazing. Like, what is his name? Hugh Laurie, one of my favorite actors. Brilliant actor. Absolutely brilliant actor. He probably went through that system. Alan Rickman did a lot of stage work before he transitioned into acting roles, even in his older years. And so many actors that they go through those rigors. So British actors tend to be, not exclusively, tends to be among the best actors there are. So you're talking about a heavily British cast. And this American woman whose best show was Suits, whose best role she could get in a film production, like a legit film production, big one, was the hot chick, like in Horrible Bosses, where she had like a minute and a half of being a FedEx girl. Like, that is the extent of her acting range. And so she that's what she got. And then you stuff her in a show like this with a very accomplished British actors. This is very fast paced. I think the dialogue's um, quick and witty. I just don't know if she can do something like that. I don't know if she can find that type of cadence. Like, it would be interested if she did, but she's also been out of acting for a heck of a long time now. I think she's always acting when she's in public to a certain extent, but she's acting herself or the version of herself that she wishes us to see and not actually acting. So I just don't know if she can actually act. If she can actually be in a production like this and be very competent, that's like a big question mark for me in my opinion. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as we look through this piece. Because acting is like, some people have a talent for it and some people don't. And she never did. So it says Meghan Markle may be teaming up with Guy Ritchie for her return to acting. As a report started circulating Friday morning that she had been offered a role in an upcoming project based in the UK, I hear that the former Suits star is in talks to join Guy Ritchie's Netflix series The Gentleman for season 3. Sources caution that the conversations are hypothetical at this point because The Gentleman starring Theo James has not been renewed for its third season yet. Its second season premieres September 3rd. Additionally, no role has been identified so far. I hear reps for Netflix and Markle declined to comment. It's unclear whether the talks would lead to a deal. Meghan getting a showy part on The Gentleman, which films in the UK, wouldn't make sense. The stunt casting would bring a lot of attention to the show and potentially new viewers. Again, this is a complete and utter misnomer. It'll bring potential new viewers. No, it will not. It really won't. Any viewers you gain would be viewers, like, you would lose more viewers than you would gain. That's 100% the case. There will be people who boycott because they don't like her. There will be people who like the original show and are frustrated. Like, maybe they'll watch out of, let's say, obligation or something, or wanting to see where it goes, but this show does not fit her wheelhouse or her public persona at all. I think this is really bad, and I hate the idea, again, is, "Oh, it'll bring a lot of attention." That's good, right? Like, it's already successful. Why do you need her to be there? It was already number 4 when it debuted the first time. Yes, it's taking you a couple years to get a season 2, but it's like, I don't understand why you need her to help you with a show that is already successful. And I don't think the quote unquote new viewers will offset be calculable at all. And if the season's bad, and let's say for kicks and giggles, she happens to play a really big role, that's gonna be bad. And not to mention the fact, one of my big questions is, as Dawn asks here, she isn't British. Will she fake an accent? That would be hilarious if she attempted to do British. Because again, I don't think she can do much of anything. I mean, we've seen her guys attempt, like, on with Love Megan. There was an element of her acting there, and it was atrociously bad. And she's just playing herself. She's so fake and contrived, and so even her acting of herself looks like acting. And the point of acting is that it's not, and it doesn't look like acting. And so I think this would be a horrible idea. The people who like Meghan would not like this show. Let me just put it that way. The people who like Meghan would not like this show. And so I think it would be incredibly stupid to attach herself to this. I think she'll hurt the show if it does get a season 3. Maybe it's really, really fantastic, and it ends up being that she has a pretty minor role. I would guess she would probably, if they were smart, they would just give her a really minor role, and it would be a lot of fluff, a lot of hype. But when push comes to shove and you watch the show, she's barely in it. It's like one of those ones where Janet Leigh, although Janet Leigh was a big portion in terms of the impact of the film. Janet Leigh in Psycho, spoiler alert, but Psycho's been around for like 60, 70 years. So if you don't know the plot twist of Psycho, then you're how should I put it? You are very much out of the loop of life. Anyways, so the plot twist of Psycho is that, and this was a big deal at the time, is that Janet Leigh was very much at the forefront of the marketing, and she was killed off within the first 30 minutes of the film. And that was a huge deal at the time. In fact, Alfred Hitchcock, who directed Psycho, obviously, made a big, big deal about how everybody had to be in the theater before the movie started so they didn't feel cheated because Janet Leigh wasn't in it that much. And so that's what they did. And so there's like famous, I think, like cardboard cutouts of him like looking at a watch or something like that and saying, "You will not be admitted if you're not in the theater on time." That was like his big thing. And so that was, you could say in some ways a bit of stunt casting, but she was obviously a good actress. She did a good job in the role, and she had a really challenging one because there's a famous pull out scene of her eye, and she was in this contorted position and she couldn't blink and she had to look dead. And so like the camera's doing this, and they're old clunky cameras from the 60s or maybe late 50s. The movie came out I think in 61, I want to say. So they probably filmed it in 60. But anyways, the camera has to pull out, a very slow pull out. And you're talking about it's not a phone or something, like a very cumbersome camera equipment, and she had to keep that pose and not blink and look dead and like so many things. So it's like amazing job that she did. So it would, I just, again, don't think Meghan has the caliber. I don't think, if they were smart, they would do stunt casting in the terms that they promote her a lot, which I think would still be dumb because I don't think anybody cares. Like, again, the audience of The Gentleman does not mesh with the audience of Meghan. And Meghan has such a big personal reputation at this point that is not connected to acting work, that again, putting her in this is not a good move for even her PR wise. Like if I was Meghan and I got this show and I had done everything she had done with As Ever and done like sweet stuff and all these things, I would not do The Gentleman. And the reason I want to do The Gentleman is it doesn't fit my brand. It doesn't fit the brand I've cultivated. Now, if you are an actor and you've sort of been typecast in particular roles, and then you decide all of a sudden, you know what, I'm going to switch and go in a different direction. And so you can make that flip. And so you're like, okay, I'm going to go in this different direction. So I am going to choose a project that surprises people, but it's related to your acting skill. I think you can do that maneuverability quite well. But I think doing everything so much connected to her personality and doing Whiplash with a project where she says F all the time or something like that is just going to be, it's just going to be a really odd choice. It's going to rub people the wrong way. Her audience is like a Hallmark audience. The audience she's cultivated is Hallmark. Now, if she was going to go back to acting full time, which maybe this is the plan, maybe they've totally given up on Archwell Productions and she's just going to act, which I mean, maybe it wouldn't be the worst. That's what the British monarchy tried to get her to do in the first place. But I would build up to a role like this. This would not be my first role. So my first role would be, again, a Hallmark style thing, something that's romantic comedy, that kind of connection. So that way my audience can get back into me acting. And then I would move in this other direction if an opportunity came up. Because again, this is, I would argue, probably quite an intense show for somebody who hasn't acted in a long time. This is a pretty intense show. And Meghan was never all that great in the first place. So I think jumping to a show like this is quite a big career risk, because you can either, let's say, sail and do fantastically, or you may just fall flat on your face because people, you look the weakest. And I would imagine Meghan would be among the weakest of the acting team. And so it goes on to say, and it's in the family, Markle and Harry have a first look deal with Netflix where they have projects in development across TV, film, and TV. But they're all stuck in production hell, so I don't understand why they're like, oh, they have all these products going on. Yeah, but they're all stuck in development hell and have been for like years at this point. So don't think that much is moving there. Word of the potential casting comes as Harry and Meghan have been living in California for the past 6 years, announced they would be returning to the UK for an extended time. So obviously Meghan as well has a role in Close Personal Friends, an Amazon MGM studio movie where, though she is playing herself, she's playing herself. So that doesn't require a lot of acting chops. And she also did Harry and Meghan with Love Meghan. She hosted Archetype. She did MasterChef Australia, which was a horrifically awful appearance. Like, she was bad at MasterChef. Genuinely quite bad. Season 2 of The Gentleman is set in the world of Richie's 2019 Miramax film. It's been 1 year since Eddie and Susie, join forces to work together in Bobby's criminal empire overseas. As they strive to expand their enterprise, the decisions Bobby is making seem to be increasingly unsound. Now, Eddie and Susie must decide whether to take action or risk losing it all, but unfettered ambition never ends well. So, again, the focus of this film seems to be not really in Meghan Markle's wheelhouse. That would be my thought. So it goes over the other members of the cast here. It was created by Richie, produced with Moonage Pictures, part of ITV Studios and Miramax Television for Netflix. So again, that seems to be the prevailing talk right now. Again, there's a lot of people, I think, when news comes out anymore about Harry and Meghan, who just seem to dismiss it all. But this is, again, that everybody's reporting it is pretty solid here. And Harry and Meghan, obviously, through their PR, want to create and generate buzz about their return to the UK and frame it as a move of success. Now, again, I've talked about how a lot of Hollywood productions are moving to the UK. So Harry and Meghan going over there is actually, like, in some ways following the trend. So it's not a big surprise. But in this particular instance with this move is trying to distract from the fact that the move from the US is due to failure, not success. They're not moving because they're successful. They're moving because they've been failures. Cookie Queens failed at the box office. It flopped. I don't know if I can see. Let's see, box office mojo. Let's see how Cookie Queens is doing since we're talking about it. It's irrelevant information, of course. And I think I've been talking too much, guys, with all the shows, everything we've been doing. I'm going to have to get some hot chocolate after this because my throat is getting a little tired, I can tell. But if we come over here to Box Office Mojo, so we're only at 588,000. They just hit 500,000 last weekend, and they barely managed to grab 100,000 more. Let's see. Oh, gosh. So the totals now, because they dropped at 119 theaters. That's a 75% drop off, by the way. Most of the times, if they cut theaters, I looked at other well-performing documentaries this year, and it's usually cut by 50% maybe, or maybe they even add cinemas. Dropping it by 75% is really bad. And each of these cinemas is making pennies. Like on Tuesday, every theater made $38. That means every theater on average. Now, this is just average. There were probably some empty theaters. This means on average, there were maybe 2 people per theater for Cookie Queens. And they expected this. You don't put a film like this in 446 theaters without thinking it's going to have a level of success. Like, they definitely thought this thing would do quite well. And so they decided to go ahead and put it in that way. And so they still have 119, although it looked like most theaters were dropping on Wednesday. But even though this looks great, you had a 200% increase. It just went from 4,000 to 13,000. These numbers are pennies, guys. They are pennies numbers. They are really bad. And so it's barely in 13 days, hasn't even crossed the 600K mark with all of the, let's say, all the money attached. They could have I looked this up because I was going to do an article on Substack and I just didn't get to it. But if they were going to do a revenue sharing with the box office as part of their distribution bill, or as part of their distribution bill, sorry, not bill. Oh, brain can't think. As part of their distribution deal, not bill, deal, they could, let's say, they would have to share even distribution stuff. And so they would make even less money. Now, the distributor paid a lump sum for the film. The distributor doesn't get something based on the box office. So it depends on how the deal is structured. But honestly, I don't think they're making more than 15, 20,000 on this film. This has been an abject failure. And Meghan was a huge part of the promotion for this film. She was a huge part of it. And so you can definitely lay the collapse at her feet, because I don't know who else it would be, if that makes sense. Because it would have to be Meghan. It would like, who else would it be? So let's go over here. I think it's funny people are already running with the headlines that Meghan just set to star in Guy Ritchie Netflix series. She's not set to star, guys, because she's not going to star. If they're smart, they bring her in for a little bit of stunt casting. She's in an episode or two, or any episode she's in, it's very minimal. And then they can get a little bit of the headlines, but the rest of the production is not messed up by her presence. If you make her a huge portion of this show, especially if she has to speak in a British accent or something, you're gonna, which I doubt. But like, is she gonna play like a drug kingpin or something? Like, that's not really the image you want as a royal. You really don't. All right, let's move over to the other big news of today. Even though there's a lot of little bitty news, we have Harry facing huge legal bill up to 34.5 million. So this is his case related to the Daily Mail, and it was absolutely, like, they got lambasted by the judge. So Harry and his fellow claimants face paying up to 34.5 million in legal fees after a high court judge ruled against them in their phone hacking case against the publisher of the Daily Mail. Harry, Sir Elton John, Liz Hurley, Baroness Lawrence were among those who sued the Associated Newspapers for breach of privacy. The prince and other claimants have an insurance policy that covers them for a total of 16.2 million, creating a potential shortfall of 18.3. On Friday, Mr. Justice Nicklin ruled that the claimants must make an initial payment of 9.5 million of the 34.5 million costs incurred by the newspaper within 7 days. So I think there's 7 people. So let's do the quick math here. So they each need to pay about 1.6 million. Now, when it comes to, I would argue, Sir Elton John, probably Prince Harry, that won't be a big deal. Everybody else, it'll probably be a pretty big deal. That's a lot of money for them. Now, again, they have insurance, but the insurance might fight the payout because of how the justice described things. Because he also granted a rare indemnity order. I have a hard time saying that word, which lists the cap on how much the claimants must contribute towards the publisher's cost. So usually they try to cap the amount they pay out. So I think in this case, I want to say it was like 16 million or something that they cap it. So even if costs exceed that, they cap it at a particular level. And so if the cap, though, is released, the Daily Mail can pursue all of the costs it incurred, in addition to potentially, I don't know how damages fits in with this, but I imagine it would maybe at some point. And such orders are only granted in cases where there has been unreasonable conduct or behavior that takes it out of the norm. Mr. Justice Nicklin wholly dismissed the claimant's speculative claim last month. The judge concluded that the litigation had been pursued in a way that took it well outside the norm. And I also can't help but think, but Harry was very stupid in his response to this case, basically calling it in the justice system and the judge that the whole process was a whitewash. And so by doing that, before all of this had been determined, like, the justice may look at this and go, well, not only did you lose the case, you didn't even understand why you lost it. So you're complaining about it, calling me basically like in the pocket of the system. I'm not quite sure what Harry means by whitewash. And he's like, but I watched this case, Harry, and he like, you lost. I mean, this is the judge thinking. And so it's like, at this point, I'm just going to make you pay for the whole kit and caboodle, buddy. I'm just going to make you pay for it all. Like, dokey. So this is just huge. This is, I like kind of like these like little shadow things because it almost looks like Harry and his lawyers are shivering. That's what it looks like to me. And so Harry, in this particular instance, he's really screwed. He's going to owe a lot of money. And he has promised, I think, to cover Baroness Lawrence's cost. And Tom Sykes wrote something talking about how Harry and Meghan had made $100 million. They have not, guys, made $100 million. So when it comes to the deals they got and everything, most things would be structured like a music production deal. So Spotify helped them set up a podcast studio in their home in Montecito that they're now leaving. So they paid for that to be set up, but out of the money they were going to pay Harry and Meghan. So they're not just paying that on top of paying Harry and Meghan, and they're not giving them a lump sum of 20 million. What they're doing is they're taking out $500,000 of that money, and then they're putting it towards the studio. Now, because Meghan Markle only did one series, that series, the money got taken out of the production for that, got taken out of the sum that they were going to get from Spotify. So they took a set of it. Let's say it took $2 million to produce that podcast, which is absurd given the type of podcast it was, but let's say it was $2 million. And maybe let's add in, well, we'll keep the podcast studio separate. So $2.5 million went into the production of one single series of a podcast show, which is probably excessive. But honestly, I think Meghan Markle would like cost so much that like it would offset. It would be terrible. Anyways, so Meghan in this particular instance, 2.5 million went to production and stuff, and maybe other things related to productions that didn't even see the light of day. And so then you have, let's say, 17.5 million left over. Now, some Harry and Meghan got probably some of that money, maybe let's say 2.5 million for doing the one single show. Maybe they got that, but they didn't get the rest of that deal. There's absolutely no way they got the rest of that deal. And we've never ever heard that they got the rest of that deal. Everything we've heard said they left money on the table because they didn't produce enough to fulfill the contract. And so Spotify was able to get out of the contract without paying them. In addition to their contract with Netflix, Variety has said it's $60 million. Now, maybe Variety on behalf of Netflix lied and misled because it was $100 million, but Variety said, let's put it at $60 million. But let's go ahead and take the $60 million number because I think that's actually the better number here. So again, some of that's eaten up in production costs. Let's say like $10 million. Harry and Meghan may have taken $30 million from that deal, like them personally pocketed. So $10 million for production and those sorts of things. Maybe you could jump it up to 20 million. 20 million, let's say we adjust goes to Harry and Meghan. And then the other 20 million, I think a lot of it went into As Ever. That's why Meghan has an absurd level of inventory. They're like, well, we'll pour a bunch of money into this. And she gets her money from Netflix if she sells her products. And Netflix severing that time means that Netflix, I think, and I was doing a video about this when the Harry and Meghan news broke, and I got a call from Dan's producer. But my theory is why she won't discount anything and really struggling to figure out how to move inventory, but yeah, keeping everything at the absurd high price point, not discounting things, is because she won't get the full amount of money she thought she would from Netflix if she doesn't sell it at the full cost that they initially decided on. So she keeps all the costs high because she wants to squeeze as much money out of the brand as possible, even though it makes infinitely more sense for a brand like hers to clear out inventory and make room for new inventory by cost cutting things. So let's take an example, which she actually added recently on her Instagram and something. Let's talk about, I don't know if would be under teas. So yeah, it would be under teas, but let's take a look at her hot toddy and spice cider. Now, actually, those are coming back into season, but as soon as, let's say, she went through the Christmas season, those were released for the holiday of 2025. As soon as those did not sell, by January, they should be on clearance. They should be 50% off, just so you can get rid of them. So you can take that money and put it towards new inventory and different inventory for the actual season. Because it's like, I don't know how long these would be active, but at some point these will go bad. So she can only sell them now this season. Now, she didn't have a ton of them in stock still, but one of them I don't think even moved at all. And because it's a cold weather season thing, it's not going to move at all for the rest of the year. So why even have it there? Why not just get rid of it and put that money back in inventory? Again, she can't figure out how to do any of this. And it's very clear. It's very clear at this point. And so the brand isn't doing particularly well. So the idea that the brand is going to sustain them, I think is ridiculous. I don't think As Ever is going to actually make them money. And I don't even know where I was going with that. But anyways, when it comes to this whole entire situation, it's just she can't think through business things logically. I don't have any issue. I mean, people may still come out with negative headlines, but at this point, looking at the whole thing, I would actually applaud her for like having actual discounts and getting rid of inventory, because that shows me you're serious. You're not there foolishly clutching the products that are going to expire in maybe a year, foolishly thinking that within a year with the Christmas season, you can move things. No, no, no. You have a set time and you try to clear inventory. And maybe you don't clear everything. Maybe you clear a lot of stuff and you're not there sitting on things that you could have put somewhere else. And so that's just the thing. But when it comes to Harry's court case bill in this instance, it's a lot of money that he owes. And this is just going to compound as time goes on. And it's going to get more and more difficult. And he set the situation up for himself. He never should have brought this lawsuit. He was fooled into bringing this lawsuit. And he foolishly went along with it. And his lawyers very foolishly didn't retract. Now, it has been said that the lawyers agreed that for this case, they either win and they do the case whether they win or lose, and it's pro bono. That has been reported by somebody. I don't know if that's the case or not, because they spent a lot of money on this, like upwards of 20 million pounds. So you really want to say that they spent 20 million pounds on this project and with all the celebrities and didn't expect a payday at some point? I kind of sort of doubt it, but it's one of those things where Harry, I think, rightly looks dumb and looks like he has an egg on his face, and I think he deserves it in this particular instance. Not every instance, but in this instance, absolutely, I think he 100% deserves it. And so we'll see, of course, again, where all of this goes, but it's just an absolute mess. It's an absolute mess. And I'm trying to think of real quick, Prince Harry test. We need to talk about this quote too. Harry is again not a particularly bright or intelligent man. He has never actually read anything or read much. He says some incredibly stupid things and doesn't know, I think, how stupid they sound. And it's embarrassing. It honestly is. So the quote I'm talking about, guys, and this was at his recent military thing he did in Washington, D.C. Again, how anybody invites him to things I don't understand. Like, he's clearly dumb. He's clearly not an intelligent man. He clearly has a lot of mental health issues. Yet people keep inviting him to things. And I don't understand why. Why would you want this guy associated with you? It's kind of like associating with Meghan on a Hollywood production. Why would you want her to associate with you? It kills your project. Like, it kills your project every time. So, I think I was getting to the as ever because I was talking about Harry and Meghan's money situation. But since I did see Desert Mermaid say here, waiting for their Montecito home to go on the market, there's no way they continue to afford that. So that's where I was going. So sometimes when I talk a lot, like, I get down these rabbit trails and I forget why I was down the rabbit trail in the first place. So when it comes to how do we look at Harry and Meghan's finances, because I do think this is important here to go over a bit, is that they did not get all that money. So definitely with the publishing deal, they probably came out of that with about $20 million. But don't forget, every year it's costing them $3 million in security. So what? They've paid $18 million so far in security. So that wiped out basically any earnings from the book, that they still also have to pay taxes on those earnings. And so you have that. And then you have Netflix, where maybe they made $20 million. But again, they have to maintain the house. That's probably a couple million out of their 6 years. So this idea that they're sitting on this huge pot of change is just simply false. The math doesn't math here. It doesn't add up. If they were making oodles of money and had like $100 million in the bank, do you honestly believe that Meghan Markle would ever take a commercial flight ever? This woman loves to take private jets. Why isn't she taking more private jets? They can't really afford it. Honestly, a lot of celebrities, I think, find that really being on a commercial flight isn't that bad. It makes more sense in a lot of ways because you don't have to, refuel in short instances and those sorts of things. But when it comes to their finances, I think they are strained. Now, does that mean they have no money? Of course it doesn't. But between their house, buying the Portuguese house as well, do they have a mortgage on that? That was 6.3 million pounds. So, you're talking maybe $10 million. Do they have a mortgage on that too? They haven't done anything with their Montecito house in terms of redoing it. They left it basically as is. They did a handful of things when they moved in, but they kept it as is. And so that house is like, well, that house is super dated now. It's even more dated than it was when they bought it. So this idea that you're going to make a payday out of that house is ridiculous. A lot of your money has been squandered in other areas. So it's not like, even again, I would argue their bank accounts, which would be more than ours. And obviously they have Diana's money and those sorts of things, but like $20 million, I think would be probably a good idea on the high end, because they've wasted a heck of a lot of money. And now that you're looking at that case and you have to pay 1 point something on million, that's a lot of money. And maybe that's not money like that's invested, but they don't have on hand. Not to mention the fact that they gave, I think, my personal theory is, so when it came to the Archwell Foundation, it had an initial like big lump sum donated of $10 million. I think that was Harry and Meghan donating. And the reason I think Harry and Meghan donated that is that they could get the tax write-off for it, which they would need. So if they donated $10 million, let's say half of Harry's, again, what Harry made from Spare, they're not sitting on as much money as people think. And they overextend themselves with a house in Portugal. I would bet you my bottom dollar, I would bet you everything, whatever they're renting and living in right now, they're getting some sort of cut for it. They're not paying market. They're staying at somebody's house. They got some sort of deal. Like some people have said, well, maybe they're staying at Ellen DeGeneres and Portia de Rossi's house that they're attempting to sell. That might be it. Maybe somebody else. Maybe they're switching houses. Maybe they're staying in a house in the Cotswolds and one of their friends is staying at their Montecito mansion or something to that effect. I don't think they have the funds to just go out lump sum and buy a $20 million Cotswolds property or anything, or maybe even $10 million. I don't think they have the funds to do that. Not to mention the fact, I don't think, again, Charles has the funds either. Again, there's this misnomer that Charles has a bunch of money and they're interested in Charles's money. He's not going to give them a lot of money. Like the only money he would give them is like what he would have given them for their royal salary, which is only like 2 million pounds. Now that's a lot to you and me, but it's not enough for Harry's lifestyle and Harry and Meghan, what they want. And so this whole notion again that there's a bunch of money sitting around for them is just simply false. There's no way there's a bunch of money, because if there was a bunch of money, they would not be moving. I firmly believe that. Even though Harry wants to desperately, I don't think Meghan would go, well, our livelihood is here. We're making money here. She's jumping ship because she also can't make money. Because here's the thing about Meghan. She's a coward. She runs away constantly from her problems. I mean, you even have to see in how she treated Harry. When they came back and announced Brexit, she jumped on the next plane and left him to deal with it. She ran away. When it came to the Sandringham Summit, granted now, I don't think she was invited, but she jumped ship and ran away as soon as she could. She is good at running. And when things got hard in the UK, of course, she ran too. So now things are hard in the US, they're running back to the UK. And it's like, that's okay. You can do that. Nobody's saying you can't. But your idea that you can fix your problems by changing your geographical location is just simply false. You can't change your problems by changing your geography. That's just not how it works. That's more chaotic than, and to stay in one place and to build a career and stuff, that is smarter, but they don't really have a career. Harry, again, has given up on having any sort of like actual big boy job. He's like, I just want to be royal again. Like that is his whole goal, is just to be royal again. That's his entire goal. And so that is where he will, that's where he will do it. That's where you do. So I did see her say, Stephen Magnus says $10 million donation, Silicon Valley Community Foundations in their 998 for 2021. Please don't fabricate history. So that is a bank. I looked into that. That's a bank where it does hide who's donating. So it is not the bank, the community foundation actually donating. It's probably through and via somebody else who put the money there. It's like a bank. You put the money in that community to move to other foundations and stuff. So to do that, it totally obfuscates who's actually donating. And so it's entirely possible, I think, that Harry and Meghan donated to themselves. That makes infinitely more sense to me than doing something else, because you can't see who donated. That's just a cover. That's just a cover. It's not the actual person who donated. It only makes sense that Harry and Meghan donated to themselves, because nobody in their right mind would just give them $10 million to start their foundation. Maybe Tyler Perry, again, but he would he would probably do that through that too. Because I remember looking at it, and how it works is that it's kind of a bank holding for donating to different things to conceal who is actually donating. So it's a bank where you put in money, that money, and then you determine where it goes, but you don't know who it is. So that's just important to specify. At least that's how I remember it working. So it could be for the Oprah interview. That's true. That could be a way they did it. That's also a way. So there's a couple different ways. We just don't know who it was. But if I was Harry and Meghan, I was smart, I would so donate it to my own foundation so I could get the tax write-off. That's why those things exist in the first place, is for you to have a tax write-off, which is totally fine. Like that's how I have no issue with that, because it's what a lot of people do. Like, they're making a lot of money. They need something to offset for taxes, and that's a way to do it. And so I don't have any issue with that. I know some people do. I mean, some people are talking about, well, how Harry and Meghan, they're avoiding the capital gains tax in the UK or whatever by moving back 6 years later instead of 4 years later. Cool, whatever. Do what's best for you financially. That's not really, I don't think, much of an issue. That to me is just good business, you know, and maybe they're not good at business and everything, but maybe they're fairly good at taxes. Like, if you are, good for you. That's awesome. But like, they did have to, they made money. So they have to somehow offset that money by getting some sort of tax write-off. If they got all that money and they didn't do anything to offset the taxes, then they would be hit with a huge bill. So to donate to a foundation, that again is whole reason to create it in the first place. So lots of different ways to look at it there. But that's how I've always chose. That's my headcanon. It's kind of like my headcanon that the only reason that Princess Caroline of Monaco hasn't divorced Prince Ernst of Hanover, who they haven't been together in, I want to say 15 years now, like officially been together in 15 years, is because she likes having the HRH instead of just the HSH. So she is higher ranked technically than her brother, because she's the Princess of Hanover too, in addition to being the Princess of Monaco. So that's the only reason why I think she doesn't divorce him when she should. I mean, it probably has a bit to do with the Catholic faith too, but that's just my funny little headcanon. And sometimes my headcanons are kind of on. I think I asked our Southern French tour guide, who knew a bit about the members of the royal family there in Monaco, and she didn't seem to push back on that idea. She kind of agreed with that idea. So I thought, well, if she agrees and she's actually kind of been there, I was like, I must be kind of on. But it's just based on, again, things that are solid and that makes sense. So what else is there? Because I moved on to another topic. Oh, yes, we need to talk about this. Because, dude, if Harry doesn't understand what testosterone is, I mean, I understand why. Like, he's almost telling on himself here. So he says, what we need, this is Harry, he's talking to, I think, military veterans and stuff, is the younger generation coming into leadership who perhaps see the world slightly differently. And I think a little less testosterone might do as well. Okay, Harry, we know you have given all your manly bits to your wife and that she leads you wherever she wants to go. Like, that is pretty obvious, but the world needs less testosterone. Really? Really? That's the line you're going with? Because, I mean, you can disagree. If you're a feminist and you hate everything about, men or whatever, that's your right. But testosterone is a good thing. Why are we demonizing testosterone so much? Testosterone is a great thing. Testosterone is how, like, men, yes, it can be used in evil purposes, but it can also be used to protect. It can also be used to help. Why are all our police officers and firemen, why are they all men? Or at least mostly men? Because they have the strength that women just simply do not have. Women, of course, bring babies into the world, and that is something absolutely beautiful that men cannot do. But men, in like the perfect working relationship, men are the protectors, women are the nurturers. Now, granted, again, people disagree with that notion, but testosterone, there are some really great female leaders out there. There's a lot of really bad ones. And I mean, the same can be true with men, but would I prefer to have the men who were leading World War II on the Allied side be men? Yes. I do not want them to see them be women. Because men are just able to see things differently. They're able to do things differently. There was actually a really interesting article I read once talking about how this was when there was a lot of Middle Eastern migrants going over, like, kind of trying to cross like the Aegean Sea and stuff, and they were getting in the water. And men were more likely to survive that. Women and children were more likely to drown because testosterone. Testosterone keeps them able to do that in a way women and children couldn't, even if the child was a boy. Testosterone is a good thing, and you kind of almost have to hate yourself to hate and say a little testosterone might do well. That's such a feminist perspective and such a degrading feminist perspective for a man, because it tells a lot on Harry too here, because Harry's basically saying that a less testosterone is a good thing. And he's almost like saying it himself, like, if I had less testosterone, I'd be better. Right? Because one of the first things Meghan did was super manipulative on her part. And I think in many ways quite disgusting is that Harry, it was like some sort of thing. And then Meghan goes, well, you should be like, don't ever talk to me like that again. Get in counseling. And counseling, I think, can be done well, but it can feminize men because a lot of counselors are women. And if you get the wrong sort of counselor, they can psychologically damage you even more. And I think between being married to Meghan and probably the excessive therapy that he has officially established himself as a beta male. And he lives the beta male lifestyle, which means he's led around by women and he defers to women. And that is what he is teaching his son, which I think is pretty despicable. Again, the sexes work together when you appreciate the differences that they have and the qualities that they have that they bring to a relationship that are different and complementary. Testosterone is part of that. And yes, you will have world leaders who, like Putin or Kim Jong Un, who, are all about the bravado and those sorts of things. And you might not like them. But I would prefer also on my side to have an additionally testosterone fueled leader who can get up in their face and say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And men can do that better than women. They just can. So Harry tells on himself so much here. The level of self-loathing he must have. And again, it's very disturbing, I think, that he is teaching his son this. That testosterone, what you're saying is testosterone is bad. And testosterone is bad in world leadership. That is not true. That is just simply not true. Let's be honest, most of the world is run by men. It would be worse if it was run by women. Because women, and this is stereotypical, I understand, tend to be more emotional, tend to think more with their head than their heart. Their heart than their head. Good leaders tend to think with their head, not their heart. And women are just not able to do that quite as well. I'm a little bit unique as a woman, as I think more with my head than my heart. But still at the same time, there is a component in women is that we just see the world differently. And there have been some amazing female leaders out there, not taking anything away from that whatsoever. But women have a critical role that they play in the world as bearing children and being leaders sometimes of their house if they're single moms, or having jobs and being leaders of companies. One of my favorite bosses was a woman. She was fantastic. But at the same time, he is putting himself in a place as well, because he also has testosterone. Like, in a room of feminists, maybe you could kind of joke about this, but as a man saying it, it just sounds to me like he is cutting himself down, and it's just really sad. It's really sad. It's really sad, but it makes sense a lot, and kind of, I think, proves where Harry is at in so many ways here. It proves where he's at, which is that his life kind of sort of sucks, but he like needs to feel like he is kind of smart here. And his wife has told him, oh, it'll be so much better, honey. Like, wouldn't the world be so much better if there's less testosterone out there? No, it probably really wouldn't. It probably really wouldn't. I mean, you just have to look at, and I hate to say it, but when it comes to at least the royal community, there's a fair amount of toxicity out there, and a lot of it is because a lot of them are women. So, it's just different. Women tend to be more backbitey and catty, generally. Not that men can't do that, but generally things prove true over time. There's the reason why certain things exist the way they do. And I don't think Harry at all is doing himself any favors with that. So let me see. I'm looking for something here. Ah, and then we can also go to Arlington National Cemetery. And this just drives me nuts because I just don't understand why anybody gives Harry the time of day. And like, why at Arlington National Cemetery? What bothers me so much is that Harry, because of the Invictus Games, it gives him this ego to think that he represents like all of military kind. That's like he doesn't. Why do you think you represent all military options or something like that? And it's like you don't. You don't. And so why are you doing this? Why are you hanging around with military families and men whose family sorry, the families of men who had died and commemorating them in Arlington National Cemetery? Literally, you were a traitor. You abandoned your troop and left. Your troop being the royal family. You were a traitor. You are the worst of a military man. And then Arlington National Cemetery for some reason.
Ladies and gentlemen,
You need to give him a whole video.
I am Sergeant Lindsay.
And this is just so dumb. Why? He's an unemployed leader. He can't find a job. And he is at one of our most like sacred institutions. Like, I'm sorry if you could hear noise there. It's you're at one of our most sacred institutions and you're there just for yourself. And what bothers me about Harry quite a bit too is that when it comes to Harry, I feel like him and Meghan both, but Harry especially, he uses sick children, he uses military veterans, he uses our war dead to protect himself from criticism. Look, I'm serving our troops. You should love me, right? No, I am not required to love you just because you're at Arlington National Cemetery. I am not. And it's like he couldn't get to lay a wreath at his own like the cenotaph, and so he has to steal ours. It's kind of like when they traipse across the tombs of soldiers in the military cemetery in Los Angeles with a celebrity Vogue photographer taking pictures of him and Meghan as they walk. Like, that's just dumb. And he was in the military for 10 years and basically was just oh, this is from the Independence Fund, which he was investigating. Again, people bring him on just because he brings them attention. Now I don't quite understand why. It's just like, this is embarrassing. This is pathetic. Just tell him to go home. Go home. Go home. He just doesn't need to be there. He has served his he has done his military service, but I have never seen somebody cling so much to the past as he does. Like, he seems to think of himself as the only man ever who has served in the military. Like, he doesn't say that, but like, you get the sense that he thinks he is the, again, global spokesperson for any veteran who has ever lived, even though he didn't really face real combat. This guy was massively protected. He does not understand the experience of real service members because he was never in the thick of anything. He got to hang out and play video games 9/10 of the time. And he brags about his kill count in his book. Now he says, I just want to open up the doors of conversation. Like, no, you don't. Why would you want to do that? So, I mean, I'm not that why would you want to do that, but why would that be what you want to say? And it's just like with the Well Child Awards too. Well, I'm helping sick children, so you can't criticize me. And it's like, yes, I can. I can criticize you. I can 100% criticize you. So that is definitely been like really really annoying to see Harry, again, mind this again and again. In some ways, I wish he would just move on from this because it just feels like this weird obsession with a time where he was relevant. It's an obsession where the time when he was happiest was the military. And so he sort of overly obsesses about it when the time has passed. And yes, you can still be involved in things, but you are not the king of all veterans. And that's what I really feel like Harry has been pushing. And some people overly indulge and they shouldn't. A like commentator says he was stationed at the Sony play. That's a good one. That is a good one. And again, I wouldn't be surprised with Harry if eventually like he comes out with a story that technically belonged to another veteran and he's kind of absorbed it because it's almost like he's desperate to actually have his own veteran story or something. So he's kind of absorbing stuff from other people. That wouldn't be surprising to me at all. So I just find that to be pretty despicable. But I don't know. There's a sucker born every minute. That's all that seems to indicate. And let's see. I'm going to go back here to X for a second. I almost just went to the Telegraph because we do have the royal family out and about at Balmoral. And apparently they went on some sort of shooting party. And so you can see King Charles there and there. And then you have William probably driving as fast as he can to avoid the paparazzi. Then you have the Earl of Wessex and Duke of Edinburgh. So James and Edward. See Catherine and William. Looks like Catherine's wearing a billed hat there. So they went out shooting. And I was like, I'm sure they're getting out some of their aggression. There's Princess Anne. We have Mike Tyndall and Zara. And so they're all there, not only for the weekend, but definitely, I think, trying to figure out how the heck they manage this. How the heck they figure out what to do. Because this is going to be a nightmare with Harry and Meghan. I mentioned this in my video yesterday, but like, even when Harry and Meghan were working royals, they're constantly trying to one up the other members of the royal family. And that was when they had to work within the system. Now that they're outside the system, and they've already tried to do this for like years now, that it'll just get worse. It'll just get worse. And it's sad. And it's sort of like pathetic. And it's not how they wanted to end their summer, I'm sure. I'm sure when they got the news, they were like, oh no. Because again, the challenge is how do Catherine and William, when they're put in a situation publicly with Harry and Meghan, and probably likely Harry and Meghan's kids, how do they react? And that's going to be a difficult thing. And so when it comes to what was I going to say? I had an idea and now I've lost it. But this is one of the things I'll be definitely keeping a close eye on. I'm curious what that first event will be. But I will say as well, we will definitely see the kids before the end of the year publicly. They'll take them to some sort of public event, 100%. They were planning on taking them this year. The whole like kind of subterfuge, not showing the kids. They might even bring them to the Well Child Awards. You never know. That might be what they do. And they might do that because that is the best way to get the attention they desperately seem to crave. It'll be fascinating to see Meghan as a stage mom trying to manage her kids because I've always wanted to see Meghan figure out how to manage kids in public. Like that was one of the things I was like, after Archie was born, I was like, oh, I couldn't wait until he was 2 and he had a tantrum and how Meghan would handle it. Because again, I think a lot of the heavy child rearing is done by the nannies. I think that's my personal suggestion. I did see somebody ask or talk about Meghan curtsying to Catherine. So my understanding of what I've seen mostly in public is that at least publicly, for sure, the royals only curtsy to the monarch. So Zara does not curtsy to William. I don't think I've ever seen her curtsy to William, but she'll curtsy to Charles and Camilla. I do not anticipate seeing Harry and Meghan curtsy to Catherine and William until they are king and queen. Now, again, some of the things behind the scenes may be different, but generally If royals who are not the monarch meet, I don't see them exchange curtsies. So if Princess Aiko of Japan, even though she's an imperial royal highness and not just a royal highness, if she would meet Princess Elizabeth, she would not curtsy to Aiko, even though Aiko technically has a higher rank in a way. Because the HRH, HH, HSH all matter. So it's the hierarchy is his or her highness, his or her serene highness, his or her royal highness, his or her imperial highness. I think there's maybe one other, but I think that's just the for there. His or her highness, his or her serene highness, his or her royal highness, and his or her imperial highness. So imperial is reserved basically for Japan, and that's it. I think technically extended members of the Habsburg dynasty, the former emperors of the Habsburg Austro-Hungarian Empire, I think they're still also technically HIHs. I think that's the case. So I look forward though to Catherine and William returning. Their first official, I think, function in the fall time will be George's first day at Eton and he will have something similar to William when William arrived at Eton and Harry as well. And so we shall see that, which will be super exciting. And it'll be fascinating to see where Harry and Meghan's kids go to school because they won't be able to keep that secret forever. And this whole notion that they're under such immense security. I mean, why come back if the security risk is so grave, Harry? Why come back at all? And when it comes to why they're back, I think for a lot of it, in this particular instance, again, it's due to money. It's due to, and the only reason Meghan agreed to this is that they need money. So they all kind of sort of agreed. Oh, and Bobby says, and his or her illustrious highness. You're correct about the Austrian Habsburg's descendants. Why, thank you. I was pretty sure because I remember seeing that, but like in terms of an active monarchy, it's only Japanese. So, and I got to hang out with the Japanese. So I do though, just to jump around, because again, there's so many things going on. I do though genuinely feel sorry for Archie and Lily because I feel like this coming home thing is going to be a big culture shock. And the other thing I really think is that Harry has this, and I want to do a whole video again. I'll probably hopefully work on it tonight and tomorrow. Hopefully we can get it done tonight. Talking about how I think Harry is very much delusional when it comes to this return. I think Harry has put an enormous thought and focus on this fixing all his problems is coming back and that he'll be happy and everything will be great. But when you leave home and you come back, nothing is the same. It's not the same. You can't leave and come home to your hometown and expect everything to be exactly the same. That's just not going to be the case. I think Harry will be on a high for a little bit and then things will come crashing down. And he seems to believe as well that I think being closer means he'll be able to reconcile with William. And I think, again, that's a pretty delusional stance to have because the proximity isn't the problem. It's the attitude and the behavior that's the problem. So whether you're closer or not doesn't change the attitude or behavior and how you got here in the first place. So the reason that their relationship is bad is because of Spare, because of Netflix, because of Spotify. Like those are the reasons why the relationship is bad. Harry being closer doesn't fix and take away Spare and Netflix. It doesn't. So because of that, even if Harry is back, and he might be technically closer, he may actually interact with William. That doesn't mean that William is just because of osmosis and Harry is around, doesn't mean William is just going to just kind of capitulate and go, yeah, Harry, I love you. And we just had such a rough go at it for a while. That's just not how real life works. It's just not how real life works. Real life is tough. These are complex relationships, and it's not going to be easy for sure. And I don't think Harry realizes that yet. I think he's still on the diluted high. I think he's still high and a bit diluted. And so he'll come in. And I'm not saying real high, but I'm saying high on the idea of if I move things, I will fix things. So I've moved quite a bit, and there's always a little bit of a high. Oh, this is a new place. It'll be fun. I get to see new things and do new things or whatever. And it just kind of never really ends up being the case. At some point, kind of reality crashes in and he just becomes part of your mundane life, and it's not as exciting anymore. I think in Harriet's idea, this is going to be very exciting. This is going to fulfill his purposes. He's going to get close to his father and his brother again, and everything's going to be hunky dory, perfect, everything. And that's not going to be the case. And then you have the kids in the corner as well going, this is totally different from my life. You've dropped us in this country where they're not normal kids in the fact that, like, yes, people move and there's kind of a process. Again, as a kid, I've moved. That's can be a rough process. But they also had the pressure of, oh, your dad said he rubbed cream on his nether regions that smelled like his mother when he had a frostbitten penis, and the kids are going to be going to school. Like, you're going to have kids who are like aware of that. They're going to be Americans. They're going to stand out. They're going to be a culture shock in terms of the weather. I will say somebody said, Britain isn't that bad. It's not the place of perpetual dreariness. I totally understand. Yes, Britain and the Europe overall has had a really hot summer this year. But what I mean by that is that I moved from, again, Southern California, where basically every day it's sunny, to Washington State, which is a very similar weather pattern to the UK, at least in the kind of the general Seattle area. And so it was always overcast and rainy and a little bit wet. And so I went from the land of sunshine to the land of rain and overcast. And actually, when we moved, somebody told my mom, they're like, um, the rate of people ending their existence is higher in like Washington and Oregon and Idaho than it is in Southern Cali. And my mom's like, no, I didn't know that. We ended up being fine, but the dreariness, it does get to you. And so if you are used to a completely different environment, putting you in a different one, yes, kids are adaptable, but there's also the added pressure of you actually matter here. And people know who your parents are in a different way and in a different context. They know probably some more of the comparisons. And so I think the kids will have a tough time. I don't think this was something that was done, I think, with the kids' best intentions or interests at heart, in my personal opinion, with Harry and Meghan's kids. This was about Meghan wanting to be on a Guy Ritchie show, even though she's not really Guy Ritchie material, and it doesn't fit her brand. This is about Harry wanting to be home because being home will make everything better again. And you can actually say too, because Harry wants to go home so badly, things weren't good in California because he wants to go home so badly. So again, he's hoping to that if he goes to California, things will be fixed. And that's just not the case. Your life doesn't get better if you move because you're still moving you, you know? Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes that's the case. But like like moving back to North Carolina was good. Not that I expected things to be the same, but I was like, oh, it's nice because it's like I like some aspects of the culture here a little bit better than other places I've lived. So it's like I like that. But it's like it doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect or everything you think or believe it will. And I'm somebody who has a very vivid imagination, so I can create a whole mental story about what's going to happen and it never ever does. So I can see Harry being a little bit like that. And I think he's gonna probably push his kids a lot. I think he's gonna expect people to do certain things for him, and I think he'll see that his brother William is like, "No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do X. I'm not gonna do Y." Like, I appreciate you, but, it's nice that you're here, I guess, Harry, but I don't have to have a relationship with you if I don't want to. Okay, so we do need to talk a bit about the story. I won't bring up the article because I do wanna get to questions, but one of the things that has been talked about is that Charles has told William that nothing will change. Like, Harry will still be the private citizen. Like, everything will be fine. Like, don't worry. I honestly think there's reasons to worry. I honestly think that there are reasons to be concerned. And Charles's reassurances through the Times of London, I don't actually think mean that much because Charles had tried to reassure people before. Oh, no, no, no. Camilla won't be queen. She'll be princess consort. I never thought that was gonna be true, and of course it wasn't true. Like, why even put that out there if you actually never intended on following it through? And it's because he didn't. He wanted to make Camilla more palatable. Oh, no, 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 I will move into Buckingham Palace. Don't worry, rehab it. I will move in. And then the rehab's almost done. Oh, no, we're just gonna stay at Clarence House. And that's not a great way to go about things because it's one of those things where Sorry, I was looking at the chat and then my brain fogged. It's one of those things where Charles might say something now, but the situation or whatever will change, most likely. Again, Harry wants to be a working royal. Harry's goal is to be a working royal. I think he'll achieve that. I think Charles will be soft on the idea because remember, the slimmed down monarchy always included Harry and Meghan and never did not include them. If they had elevated, let's say, Beatrice, and I know people have issues with Beatrice, but let's say that he had elevated Beatrice, that would mean that the slot that Harry and Meghan were supposed to fill has been claimed. And so there's no slot open. There's still a slot open, guys. Technically, Charles's vision always included Harry. That Harry decided not to follow that vision has been, I think, a source of tension and has forced more of the burden to fall on everyone. So Harry's goal is to be a working royal. I think he will very much pester his father to become that again. That is all apparently Harry knows how to be able to do. He apparently is devoid of any other skill set to work with at all. So he must be a working royal again. And so I think things will change. It's impossible to say they won't change. Impossible, because Charles doesn't really stick to his word. He's soft on it. And I made the example again last night that when it comes to Charles, he was bullied into marrying Diana, a woman he should not have married, and he knew he shouldn't marry her, but he did it anyways because he was getting pressure. I made it a lot about his grandma, but also his dad. So they were all pressuring him to get married, and he just was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. Rather than going, I don't like, Diana's a lovely person, but we are not compatible. I'm going to find somebody who's compatible. Have patience with me. I'll figure it out. Instead, he kind of took, I would argue, the cowardly approach. It just was like, well, they like her. She's a virgin or whatever. Like, I'll just do it. And like, that is not how you marry. And so the part of the reason we have all this mess is because Charles couldn't stand up to family members back in 1981. And so it almost feels like we're here again, in a way. He can't stand up. He can't take a firm stance on something. He's somebody who likes to see how things play out. And I feel like we already have enough evidence with Andrew that when you kind of leave things to chance, you leave things to play out, then something tends to go wrong. Something tends to go wrong when you just leave things to play out. You just kind of leave it hanging or whatever. That's not I think, a good leadership style. And that has proven to not work now numerous times. It has proven to be ineffective. It has proven, especially if, again, there's a combination of things here. If it's kind of, let's say, more of a curiosity or something, you can watch how things play out. But Andrew was a situation where as soon as they knew how bad things could potentially get, or they knew how bad things were at the time with Virginia Giuffre, there should have been a massive audit of everything related to Andrew. Every communications, everything related to Andrew that had any hint of being pushed on the monarchy. Like, there were a whole bunch of papers that the palace had never ever looked at about Andrew. And it's like, you can't know how to treat somebody without all the information attached. So it should have been somebody's job, like an entire team's job, to go through the entire record of Andrew as a royal in this trade envoy role to make sure there were no improprieties. And if there were questions, then the palace had the obligation to address those directly with Andrew, figure out how to respond to them, and prepare for the worst case scenario. Nobody prepared for the worst case scenario. They're just kind of sitting on their butts hoping it got better. And that waiting around has proven to be disastrous for the royal family. I really think Charles just needs to stop doing that. And he's so reactive rather than being proactive. So that is my thought on whether or not Charles will really, let's say, follow his word. Oh, we didn't really get to Meghan's thwarted political ambitions. I would like to get into that sometime, so I may need to do some separate research there. And then the other thing I had on my list here was, can Harry really keep his mouth shut? I think the answer is no. I don't think Harry can really keep his mouth shut at all. That's a danger, is that there is like a strong possibility here that Harry does something dumb. Like, and it's not just like that he can keep his mouth shut on family things, but in world leadership matters. Because the reason we need to go over kind of the lead up to this is, we had the visit to Jordan. We had, the visit a little bit further back to Colombia and Nigeria, but really Jordan. We had this year Australia. And you can see Harry and Meghan leading up, especially Harry, making incendiary political comments, basically shilling for Hamas and Gaza to the world through the WHO without considering what Israel's perspective is. And you can disagree with how the Gaza conflict is going on, but smart people know and understand that it is more than like it is. When it comes to Israel and Palestine, there are centuries, like millennia of conflict that are deeply ingrained and very complicated. This is not an easy fix. And Harry, like, just kind of going off and shilling according to what the what's his name? What the head of the WHO wants Harry to do is just very stupid and very dangerous, because what you don't want to do if you are King Charles is have a rogue member talking about, the situation in Turkey or something. And I mean, Harry has talked about the situation between Jews and Muslims in the UK. Like, he's talked about Europe and the US and Ukraine, like going completely off script. And so to me, some of the danger of Harry running with his mouth of the family, like, that's always there too. But it's not just that risk. It's all these other political things that Harry is dipping his toes into that I don't think, in my personal opinion, he is qualified at all to address. And that is the other danger. So, guys, we will go ahead and end the main portion here, but we do have some super chats and things to go over, and then we'll try to get into the chat with questions too. We have 5 ducklings who gave a super chat. Thank you so much. 5 ducklings. Think of ducklings and so cute. Dizfan says, what are your latest thoughts on the marriage? Are we looking at a potential separation that leads to divorce? So this is part 1. Part 2 says, do you think King Charles was blindsided or aware of the possible return since the summer of last year? Great question. And then Dizfan says, do you think this is a possible trial run until next year after Invictus? I don't get the dropping of the security complaint. So also all very interesting questions. So thank you so much for the super chat. So number 1 here is divorce in the future. Potentially. It's sort of hard to tell because they're definitely keeping. My always thought has been is that Harry and Meghan really have nothing in common. So at some point the rubber is going to meet the road and they're going to probably go in their different directions because fundamentally they don't have things they like to do in common. Like, again, somebody giving up their entire life to fit somebody else's ideal is never a good thing. I was in fact looking through Chelsea Davies' Instagram and her out fishing and her out in the bush and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think her and Harry should get back together, but I think she seems more like the type of girl he would like and enjoy spending time with over Meghan. I don't think there's much to, I mean, I don't even think Meghan's funny or fun to hang around with. So I just can't understand them lasting super long. But again, as a reminder, Harry and Meghan run when things get tough. And I don't think it's just tough financially. I think it's tough in the relationship too. Money stress is one of the biggest stresses in marriage. And that the fact that they weren't bringing in the big bucks that they thought they would, I think definitely concerned them. And I think it definitely provided stress. And the convenient part about having the Portuguese house so close is that Meghan can spend a lot of time in Portugal, especially if the kids are in boarding school, and Harry can spend time in the UK, and they can be effectively separated. Especially if Meghan gets back into acting, that is also a possibility where Meghan meets somebody and falls in love on set. That definitely happens. So they're spending a lot of time together, a lot of long hours, and it's not just like producing people, like people behind the scenes, but like people in front of the cameras who tend to be quite attractive. So there might be a young toy boy, we call it boy toy. You guys call it toy boy there in the UK. She might find a young strapping toy boy to partner up with. And so that is always a distinct possibility too. Because although the title gives her a lot, I think she still desperately wants a ton more money. I think she wants a lot more money and it's not happening. And I think that's her big challenge. So was Charles blindsided by all this, or did he know since the summer of last year? So I do not think he was blindsided. I think he more probably had an idea that this was coming, but Harry and Meghan, of course, let him know officially it was going ahead. I think that's what he learned on Sunday. I can't imagine, like, if they kept the entire thing from him, again, that is reason number 45 that you should not trust Harry and Meghan, is that they don't trust you. And how can you trust them if they don't trust you? And that they want to create chaos and tension and all these things through waiting for the announcement rather than involving you in the process. So there's a distinct possibility to me that Charles knew of something, but didn't know the finalized plans until Sunday. That is my personal headcanon. Disfan says, to end it all, do you think the return is a trial run until next year after Invictus? I don't get dropping the security complaints. So this was interesting in Tom Sykes. Tom Sykes had a newsletter where he said he talked to a friend of Harry's and that in March, even though he had lost the court case, he's like, well, I'm going to continue to pursue it. This is what the friend said of Harry. Harry was going to continue to pursue it, but he's like, screw it. He's moving back to the UK. And that shows so many things. It demonstrates so many things. Number one, that all the hemming and hawing and whining and crying and everything over security was completely and utterly hogwash. If he was going to move anyways, security or no security, then this whole exercise was incredible stupidity. It was just a way to try and get his way after he was rejected. And so he tried, like you can give it to him. He tried, but I don't think it helped him at all, if that makes sense. I don't think it actually helped him in the long run to be kind of sort of part of this. And so he just wanted to move. This is the other thing too. It's kind of like, again, I need to go over the whole period, I think, of the build up to this. But like even with, let's say, Australia, I mean, they're doing this half in, half out thing because they think one trip to Australia proved they could do it. That's not evidence. That is a one-off. Who's to say that everything will be like that? Like you can even do the UK stuff with Meghan. And this is dumb too. So you couldn't bring Meghan to these events because you didn't get the security you want, but you're coming back. Meghan's coming back with you and the kids, and you're all going to be like, they are going to be front and center. So I don't get it. It honestly doesn't make a ton of sense. This is one situation where I think there is really not a lot of logic here. This is just Harry wanted to do X. I think Meghan was dragging her feet, but when Hollywood really stopped calling, she's like, okay, let's do this. Again, I have to do a little bit more research and kind of bring together my entire thesis of this process, because I think this was a process. I do think it was also a little rushed, but lots going on. So we have MDR-R2Q for $10. Thank you so much for the super chat saying, do you think this is an opportunity for William to show his steel versus Charles, such as there will be no interaction photos ever with Louis and Charlotte with Harry and Meghan? So that's going to be a really, really tough thing to determine. That's going to be a really tough thing to carry out. I don't think as well it's smart to put the foot down like that. I think, again, William and Catherine will have to be seen as cordial with Harry and Meghan. Maybe they don't interact much, but they cannot exclude them either. That's just going to make them look heartless and cruel. So they do have to interact with them. How much so is a question. Stephen Magnus said 34 million, 16.2 million insurance, 2.5 million times 7 claimants. Yes. Lizzie B says, please, everyone, please remember to hit the like button for this RNN Afternoon Tea live stream. Thank you. Kristen M said, for $4.99, Brittany, how much more of this Sussex drama can the BRF handle before the damage is irreversible? William may not be king for a long time. Thank you. Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question because Charles is not the king to handle this. It's just clearly not. He's had infinite levels of time to handle this, and he hasn't. And this is just going to get worse. It's just going to get more chaotic. It's just going to be crazy, crazy, crazy. So there might be a lot of damage, though, in this process. That's why it was kind of nice when, because it would be almost nice if Charles did everything to Harry that needed to be done and just quietly abdicated. But unfortunately, the thing is, Queen Elizabeth's long life was an absolute blessing. Not saying it wasn't, but it left a lot of instability in its wake. Because when it comes to the monarchy, she would never have abdicated, but I think it honestly would have been good if she did. Because by waiting so long, Charles craves the throne so much that I don't, like, he wants to reign so badly and he wants to make his mark. I just don't really feel like he's thinking of the monarchy long term. I think he's just thinking of himself and his own legacy, to be honest, and not even really thinking how Harry will impact that. I think he's only really thinking of himself. He's not thinking of the bigger picture. And yes, I know some people going, well, he's waiting to see how things play out and he's taking the cautious approach. Sometimes there's something as being too cautious. Charles, I think, could fit into that, being a little too cautious. But at the same time, this requires decisive action because not doing something can be worse than actually doing something. Because who's to say the next scandal might not be monarchy destroying? And we have seen in Spain and Belgium and, the other monarchies where things have abdicated, it's really more Spain than anybody, that with the abdication of the monarch, he took the scandal mostly with him. And Felipe and Letizia have done a fantastic job rehabbing the Spanish monarchy. They've done a fantastic job of it with their children. But Harry, just not so much. Sorry, Charles, not so much. Disfan says, did you see where the king and all family members were at Balmoral? Do you think Edward or Anne was in the middle? I can imagine William's anchor. I don't know if William was in the middle, but I'm sure or they were in the middle, but I'm sure William is quite frustrated. I don't know if angry is the right word, but frustrated and obviously concerned about what the future holds. Because Harry and Meghan, if they're one thing, they are chaotic. They are unpredictable. They are toxic, and that hits everybody. Like even in the overall royal watching community, guys, the inclusion of Harry and Meghan in the royal sphere has made this so much more toxic than it has ever been, and it keeps getting more and more toxic. I've noticed, especially as people, I would argue, create more and more conspiracy theories, people get more and more incensed about things, and it's just toxic after toxic after toxic, and it's frustrating to see. All right, so we have Elsa, who I think this is Swiss francs. What will they do work in the UK? Actor, mom. I think Meghan is going to maybe move back into acting. And again, that's not like the most horrible thing because she's actually done that. But it just goes to show again, like the instability in their lives and their careers that they can't quite figure out what works. And so they're constantly trying different things. And if she's trying this different thing, what about As Ever? I mean, I can actually see my crepe mix over there. Like she completely dropped that. I remember somebody going, well, we're going to make crepes our Saturday morning tradition. I was like, well, great. You could do it like 3 times. And then Meghan Markle didn't sell crepe mix anymore and it's dropped and there's no rhyme or reason, no discussion. It's just gone. So Elsa also asks for Swiss francs. Do you think the love of the lifestyle in the UK, no daily press, no big events? I don't know. Because to me, part of the appeal to Meghan of being in the UK is being royal and being part of those royal events. And how long will it be before Harry and Meghan are invited to some sort of state banquet? Maybe, maybe not. They're not working royals, but they may get an invitation at some point. Like, how do you manage that? And the crazy thing is, for Harry and Meghan, they would have eventually become the Sophie and Edward. The person who wears actually a tiara or did the most in the British monarchy is Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. She's the one who wore a tiara the most. Now that hasn't been the case for a while. We haven't had a lot of big weddings or something like that, and nobody from the British monarchy went to the 80th birthday celebrations of King Carl Gustaf. Why, I don't know. The British are stingy that way, but yeah, I think she will, especially if she is in the UK, I think come to resent that she doesn't get to be a part of the big things, and I think a push may come from there too. All right, 5 Duckling says, returning to the UK has just demolished the easiest justification to remove their titles, that they were living abroad. Maybe that's why we return. That's definitely a big part of it. Because to me, the titles would have been so much easier to remove if they were still in California. With them being in the UK, that makes it a lot more difficult, especially if they start gaining some traction of public affection. That makes that a lot more harder. And it just should be done just for the sake and the future of the monarchy. It just needs to be done. They are too unpredictable. They are too unwieldy. Like, it just has to be done, but I just don't think it will. But yeah, that's the easiest probably reason. Baseline 1989. Thank you so much for the super chat. Said, I had thought that if Meghan returned to California, that she'd try to take Lily with her and leave Archie in England with Harry, Parent Trap style. I mean, I guess she could. I really don't think so. Again, she knows that her bread is buttered by the British monarchy. So she knows this benefits her too. because the only thing that makes her relevant in the entertainment industry is those titles and nothing else. So I think in some ways she is glad to move too because she needs to re-up her royal credentials. Lizzie B gave a super sticker. Thank you so much, Lizzie. And Kay Coffee says, ask non-working royals go to state dinners. Not generally, but if there's a US president state visit, I think having Meghan there could be a distinct possibility. That won't happen for at least another couple years, but again, possibility. Lizzie B says 2027 will be an interesting year for sure. I mean, just the end of 2026 will be wild. Like, do they show up at Christmas at Sandringham? I think so. Neely, thank you so much for the super sticker, $9.99. Thank you so much. And we have Amaya Baker, 5809 says William and Catherine will be cordial. They're pros. They are. They're pros. They'll be cordial, but it will be tricky because there will be moments where, especially because Meghan is so aware of the cameras and how people are interacting and stuff like that, that she will attempt to do certain things, and Catherine has to be cordial, yet probably stand her ground. And that's going to be tricky sometimes. It just will be with the cameras on you. Like, I don't envy them that at all. All right, those were all our super chats. Well, thank you so much, but we'll continue here a little bit in the chat too. Heather Cranford asks, that makes me ask again, does anyone know if the Van Cuspens are being friendly to Harry or anyone else in the royal circle? That I do not know. Emily Ersk says, can you imagine world leaders coming to a state dinner expecting to see the Wales' family and get stuck with Meghan? Yeah. E.G. Savvy says, you're right. Very unpredictable. It's very true. Harry and Meghan are wildly unpredictable. Space Cadet Lisa says, if the king pays some or all of Harry's court costs, they are in no position to expect or demand anything from the royals ever again, never mind state dinners. So again, he would not be paying for those court costs. Again, Charles is not going to give Harry money. The only time Charles would give Harry money is if Harry was a working royal. If he's not working royal, he's not getting any money. Unless they were absolutely desperate on their last legs or something. And again, Charles doesn't have that much money to give. He has to support Andrew fully, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, and Anne. In addition to the rest of the royal machine, except for the Waleses. So he doesn't have, let's say, that much money to give. Terry Hayer says, Meghan won't face racial prejudice. She will have to accept a royal snub. Yeah. Too old to care says, difficult, yes. Impossible, no. Yes, I think it'll be difficult, and they will have successes and failures. Like, I would say be prepared for some awkwardness while they figure out how this all works. Shaz says, then I quit. Hopefully not. Heather Cranford says, not if the King William is on the throne. And Shaz says, after supporting monarchy for 50 years, I'm out. Yeah, I think bringing Harry back in will not be a good idea. But again, I just don't know if Charles can help himself and not do it. Priyanka Jod Hav says, imagine a state visit and these two grifters whining and dining the world leaders and also making commercial deals. That's a problem. That's why you can't do it. But again, I want to hold out hope. Sandringham Princess Goose says will be super icy. I think so. Chantal says, Harry and Meghan are stupid. Thinking that this time things will be different. In no time they will fall and display the same emotions. The fallout will be nuclear. Very true. Very true. Aang says there'll be William next to Andrew 2.0. Yeah. Beth Kidd writes, I bet Americans are glad they're finally leaving, but I don't think us Brits are too happy about it. No. I don't think anybody wants them. That's the thing. Kat Ching says she better not shift through the crown jewels. Can you imagine watching her marching through Tiara Watch? I just don't think that would be a possibility. Again, all that is heavily under guard, so they just don't allow anybody to access it. Amy Moore says, Captain's going to put Meghan in her place with a look like she did when they were about to walk as a queen past. Yeah, I mean, Meghan will definitely have the inferiority complex, which will be difficult for her, I think, to navigate. Riley's US says, Harry inherited his parents' worst traits. Charles's weakness, Diana's immaturity and self-centeredness. William inherited Charles' intellect and love for the environment, and Diana's charm and empathy. He did. Although I will say, I don't think he has quite the same charm as his mother's does. His mother's charm is like 1 in a million. To have that level of charisma is really a very special and unique thing. Very few people have it. Even if somebody has a twinge of it, they may not have the full effect. Brooke Hofi says, I have to agree with you. They're completely and utterly chaos. I feel so bad for Prince and Princess Catherine. You are not allowed to criticize the king, or you can't criticize Harry because YouTube at you. Yeah. Yeah, it's all over the place for sure. Riley's US says, the Cotswolds is amazing. My sympathies that it will soon be ruined by the attention addicts, Harry and Meghan. Yeah, we have a Cotswolds. The Cotswolds is part of our UK trip coming up next year. And that'll be interesting. We have not only Cotswolds, but we also have the Slovenia trip, in case you're wondering. Claire Hendry says is all over that the feds were looking into Harry's visa and who was given a heads up that he would be arrested for falsifying his applications, hence their unexpected departure. I really don't think that's true. I don't think the feds would arrest Harry. That's just excessive. I think they would cautiously negotiate because he is the son of a head of state. So you don't want to frog march him through ICE and put him in an ICE facility and deport him. Like that's not what they're going to do. And so I just don't find there is any validity to that. Now, will there be questions about his visa that may come out that may push him out? Yes. And somebody pointed out as well, like 6 years is the type of visa he probably had. So he probably was ending, he was probably getting to the point where he was ending on his time here, and they were trying to decide whether they pursue citizenship or whatever. And Harry would probably have to go to the UK, but Meghan wouldn't, but they would be trying to figure it out. So I think that's kind of the case there. BMJ's 143 says, remember when Meghan poked Catherine's arm getting into their seats? That was at the funeral. She is such an antagonizing pest. I actually don't remember that, but Heather Cranford says, Brittany, I must correct you on this. The Habsburgs were not illustrious highnesses. They were imperial highnesses, royal highness. Illustrious was far below their rank. So yes, I said imperial. Somebody else mentioned that illustrious was something. I haven't really heard illustrious too much, but yeah, the Habsburgs were imperial royal highnesses, just like the emperors of Japan or members of the Japanese imperial family. Pepper and Nutmeg's mom says, this is giving me Duke of Windsor vibes without Queen Mary and the Queen Mother protecting the throne from danger. Yeah. I mean, Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, they did the tough job there. Actually, both the Queen Elizabeths, which was keeping Edward away. And so the former king, obviously, Edward, the Duke of Windsor, they kept him away. And it did deprive him of royal oxygen, which was actually helpful by giving Harry and Meghan more royal oxygen. And again, I'm not saying that Harry and Meghan can't move back to the UK. What I am saying, though, is that Charles could strip Harry of Counselor of State titles or whatever, so that even if he comes back to the UK, he comes back as a private citizen. There are no illusions that he is a royal. The problem with Harry is that he has illusions and other people have illusions that he is a royal and represents the monarchy, and that's just simply not the case, and therein lies the danger. Chantal says, Harry and Meghan back in the RF will not work. It was chaos before. It will be chaos again. I'm just already tired, and I feel for Catherine and William. Me too. Riley's US says, didn't care when Prince Philip was ill. They were on Oprah as he was dying. Not when the Queen Elizabeth's family was told she has weeks to live. They didn't visit and filmed the mock curtsy. Very true. Yeah. And Harry could have visited the Queen the day before she died, and he chose not to. That's definitely on him. So Spin Velocity says, does their return to the UK now make it virtually impossible for Harry to William to strip them of their titles? Not impossible, but a little bit more difficult from a PR perspective. And again, we don't know how all this will play out. So it might be fine, but it might be pretty tenuous. All right. Oh, we have Elsa. Thank you so much for the Swiss francs here. The kids go to temporary school. Are they welcome in the UK? No working royals. That means no balcony, no Christmas carols. So when it comes to the kids, I think they will have like a good school system that they get into. And so that, you know, they'll be able to lead mostly private lives, but they're not working royals. But Harry and Meghan, Harry's definitely going to act as if he's a working royal. That's the danger here. He's going to act as if he's one. And that does mean no balcony at this point because he's not officially a working royal. But together, Christmas is considered a family event and not an official like royal calendar event in the same way. All the members of the family are invited. Most of them attend. Catherine will have to invite Harry and Meghan to that. Sandringham, all the family is invited. Harry and Meghan and the kids will be invited. They've been invited probably every year and just declined this year. They'll probably accept. So I hope that answers your questions. Diana Didi says, escape from Olive Garden. Catching says, that is so false. He is married to a U.S. citizen. Those claims are so overblown. Yeah, they're really overblown. Like, they would never arrest him. Like, that's, again, it's just like a PR nightmare. Nobody wants to do that. Beth Kid writes, I'm scared of another Andrew 2.0 if Harry comes back, as Harry used to have the palace's PR to protect his bad behavior. Now he'll be viewed if the palace. Now, how will he be viewed if the palace PRs came back? I don't know. It's a big question. Helen said, "Oh my goodness, Meghan was horrible in Fringe. I kept rewatching the show to see how bad she was. Yeah, she was pretty bad." Princess Goose says, "Except Andrew didn't attack the Waleses or the king. He's just just angry at Andrew's actions towards women." Very true. That is very true. Beth Kid writes, thank you so much for the £5 super chat. Said, "Have you heard of the rumors Meghan is in talks to play for an acting role in the TV series by Guy Ritchie?" Yes, we covered that in the first little bit of this video, quite a bit. Just my overall perspective is that while I think maybe returning to acting won't be the worst thing for Meghan, she's kind of admitted through some sort of discussion that she kind of likes the idea of not actually being part of the production process and just showing up on set and filming and leaving. So that goes to show you, I think, where her hard work is not her forte. But I think the choice of role is ill-advised. I don't think it fits her current public persona. I think it'll be kind of whiplash. I don't think it'll be particularly a good move. I think she should do something more in like the Hallmark women romance type of vein. I think that would be a better option for her than something kind of brash and violent like Guy Ritchie. Not that his stuff isn't good, but it's just like totally different style to the public persona she's cultivated over the last couple of years. Riley's USA says they were living their best lives, yet they're moving to the UK. The Sussex squad is doing major mental gymnastics and spin. Make it make sense. Yeah, they're really struggling, I think. And again, it's like a disservice to their fans. So they like told their fans all these things, and all of a sudden they turn around and go, no, we're not doing that. Bobby Australia, thank you so much, said Harry seems to have inherited the worst traits of both parents and his great grandmother, Queen Mum. Oh well. Yeah, Elsa says, "Are they welcome in the UK? They are not working royal, so no balcony." Yes. Amaya Baker says, "As ever is going to end up being folded once they figure out enough sales to get the products out there." Yeah, she is. She has announced a new Brute, which I guess is fine, but like it's so weird because it felt like she abandoned the wine side of the business for so long, and now it's like, oh, a year later after our last release, we're having a new thing randomly come out, and it's kind of like the same thing that we've already released, and it's like, do you have any other things? Like that's not exciting. It's just a bad mess. Polish and Needle said William and Catherine and Mike and Zara will keep their children away from Archie and Lily. Peter's girls are too old, and Beatrice and Eugenie's kids are too young. I don't think they'll keep them away because I think that's kind of like yes and no. I don't think there'll be any play dates forthcoming because Harry and Meghan could not in saying that they would, let's say, necessarily manipulate their kids into being spies, but the kids would kind of inevitably become spies because Meg can ask them certain things and hear different things about what's going on in the Wales' life. So that's a risk. But especially in public events, I can't see them telling their kids to stay away because that would be seen as rude. Now, do I think they'll interact with the other kids? No, because Archie and Lily know because their friends are the Tyndall kids. So they'll hang out with the Tyndall kids because those are their friends. So I don't think they'll hang out with Harry and Meghan's kids all that much because they probably don't really know them. At least right now. E.G. Savvy, thank you so much for the super sticker. I really do appreciate it. And we also have Be Glad 5924 who became a YouTube member. So what I'm going to work on, especially for memberships, is I'm going to create a calendar of events for the next month towards the end of the month. And that way you can be aware of when the live stream, like members only live streams will be, when other events might be, because I will be traveling in September briefly and I got to look at and see how the schedule of things is going to work. So I will let you know. Of course, sometimes things are subject to change depending on how the day is going. Monday was kind of a wreck. I don't know if you heard, but literally the minute before I was about to go on with Dan, our internet went out completely. And it was gone for like the whole day. I only heard it come back on in the middle of the night when my printer switched on and started printing. I'm a very light sleeper, by the way. Brooke Hofi. Oh my goodness, how cringeworthy to see that awful woman's nobody's going to watch her and they're going to criticize her to know she's a loser. She can't act and she's just a horrible human being and Harry is stupid. So I like people will still watch The Gentleman because there are people who like it. I just think it is not a great role for her. Bobby Australia says the Duke of Windsor also lied about his funds or lack thereof to get as much as he could from the king in case his brother Harry has no issue lying. Very true. Shaz says you're right, Amaya, but calling the UK public and country racist kind of takes the piss, don't you think? A little bit. Royally Fruit says, can you make a prediction, Brittany? How long will Meghan stay? That I don't know. That I don't know, because I could definitely see her kind of semi-permanently relocating to Portugal. I mean, California, again, is kind of decreasing in relevance in the entertainment industry overall, but it's also the home of it. So that's just I don't feel like I have enough at this point to really figure out what the prediction would be. But I think as things get bad, it's more likely. Let's say because we've had at this point 6 years. I give it 6 years. Because it was what? Well, it wasn't 6 years in the royal family, but 6 years in California. Let's give it 6 more years in the UK, and then we'll see what happens. Pepper and Nutmeg's mom says, although Charles was close to Edward and wrote to him a lot for advice, so I'm not surprised about this mess. Yeah. Commentator says Meghan should market a limited edition as ever rubbish bin. Oh man, I have a lot of ever rubbish, I will admit. Amaya Baker says them calling the entire country of the UK racist was always ridiculous. It's convenient that is now gone. I guess every racism evaporates. Although it's weird too that they're returning given the recent death of Jason Arday and how people are blaming the press again. It's like it's weird. It's almost worse for Harry and Meghan that they're switching because people are like, but wait. I thought that we were that the royal family was racist. What? And we used to have this racist thing. So what? It's very confusing. Riley's USA says, my suggested conditions for Harry and Meghan, public groveling apology, no rival court, no pap strolls, stay away from the public eye except for a handful of charity appearances and no taxpayer support. We'll see if it happens. Pearl Mokuan says, the gentleman is a highly Brit-coded and proud. Problem with her is that she has a bad reputation, precedes her, like getting Rachel Zane to play Sleeping Beauty, J. Pinkett Smith to act again. Hopefully Dior part 2. We shall see. We have Elsa. Thank you so much for the Swiss franc there. Do you really think the move to the UK or just PR? No, it is definitely a move to the UK. This is not just like a rumor. Again, I think sometimes because there's so much information floating out there and it's kind of hard to see what's what anymore. But when it comes to this was obviously a coordinated release. They would look very stupid if they didn't move. Like exceedingly dumb if they didn't move. Kind of like that whole Harry and Meghan are going to the UK and then not going for the visit in July. Everybody came out of that looking exceedingly dumb. I have a video called, Harry and Meghan's PR has a collective intelligence of a kumquat, and I still stand by that video. So I think they are moving to the UK because they just were trying to play so many, like they were trying to do so many different things and nothing worked, and they were kind of like they were jumping on situations before they had the information. It was just a dumb move. All right, Beth Kid writes, thank you so much for the £2 super chat. Said, can they even afford 3 homes on 2 continents? I don't think so. I honestly think at least the house in the UK must be a friend lent or something. I would bet you anything they're not paying full retail or full commercial rates for it, whatever it is. And then when it comes to the Portugal house, there may internally be, some people have called it like a timeshare. I can't definitively say that, especially if they're decorating the place to their taste, but they definitely can rent it out part of the year, which is maybe what they're doing, and make money on that house that way. Apparently the Montecito house they're not going to rent out, but that monstrosity would take a lot of money to maintain. So maybe like Marcus Anderson's going to live there and just help maintain it. Because like just the maintenance alone would cost a fortune. So Farrell Elemental says, I don't believe any of this from Meghan. I don't believe she has a great offer for work. I don't believe she's coming to England permanently. Too much work, especially relocating the help from their family. So the thing is, though, they've dropped a lot of the help that they had. So there's not that many people to move. And you got to remember, James Holt moved back to the UK, one of their most staunchly supportive staff members. That might have been the first sign that a move to the UK was a potential option and that they had been working through how to get moved and that he was their mole going around finding places for them and their kids. I would bet you anything James Holt was probably still on the payroll one way or another. I mean, I think they said he was always going to be like a critical member of the team or something, not officially, but unofficially type of thing. And I can really see him doing all the work to get them prepared to move. So this might have been a year in the making, but I think we'll have to see. Bobby Australia says, I can totally see Meghan being a cougar, as someone here suggested. Once the kids start school, it can be under the radar for a while, but hints will come up here and there. Yeah, again, especially if she's on set a lot. Janet Black says, totally disagree that Waleses will give the Sussexes the time of day. Not saying that they'll give them the time of day, but in public situations, they will have to interact. You can't just dismiss and act like somebody isn't there who's there. Like that just, again, comes across as very bad. Beth Kid Wright says the amount of good PR is seemingly going on. Yeah. Amata says Catherine will not let the Sussexes near her kids. All you need is Meghan to make a false claim against one of the kids, and Catherine's going to have issues again. William will keep them away. Like he will try, but again, in public, that is not going to be possible. Like you can maybe carefully arrange things, but it's still going to be challenging. Amaya Baker says Catherine is a lot stronger than some of y'all make her out to be. That is very true. She's the real tungsten of the royal family. Jack says, LOL, it would be kind of hard to tell your kids that they have to talk back to the head of another kid. Monta says Meghan will not really come over, only for a couple weeks and stay at the Soho house. That's a possibility. Princess Goose says Theo James is a good actor. And I don't see how she'd fit in there or with the other acting circles. Acting matters more than looks in Britain. Very true. The acting community is very different in the UK than the US. And so I think that's going to be a challenge for her. Again, I just don't even know if she could keep up on a set like that, especially with how the dialogue works. Because I remember it being quippy. And of course, the British wit is very different than the American stuff. So I don't even know what role they would give her. Like she would have to be an American because number one, again, I think her attempt at a British accent would be atrocious. And that's the only way you could do it. Kay Coffee says King Charles should allow Harry and Meghan to walk with the family. Andrew doesn't walk. Yeah, they're gonna have to walk with the family. Final Menta says, I don't believe they own 3 houses, smoke and mirrors. E.G. Savvy says, yep, they're going to be very busy, Brittany. That is true. Amaya Baker says, Charles was actually had no reason why Harry and Meghan can't walk because he can't use that excuse that they were barely working royals and they aren't pedos. Yeah, Harry and Meghan will walk, and there's no reason why they wouldn't. Basically, the entire Sandringham walk is filled with non-working royals. So. Janet Black says, Brittany, the department story is true. I don't remember what that refers to. Pepper and Nutmeg's mom says, I still think Meghan is in The Gentleman. She'll play a duchess. She may. Farrell says she'll basically play herself. Because again, that's the range of her acting is herself. Farrell says, it doesn't matter what the so-called conditions are. Harry's free to come back. And those two have zero integrity. They ignore all the rules. Too Old to Care says, when have they ever picked a lane and staying in it? Very good point. Farrell Monta says the leopard doesn't change its spots. Very true. Janet Black says the threatened deportation story is true. I honestly don't believe it, to be quite honest. So, I mean, there's a lot of stories out there that aren't, some are true, some are not true. I don't know. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe for a second that the department would go that far. Just because it just would be a PR nightmare. Shaz says, Brittany, do you think Charles Spencer would offer them the garden cottage at Althorpe that Diana asked for? That's actually, I suggested that in my theory, I think in the video yesterday, that Althorpe would be a possibility. Mary Buck says, how long was the Montecito property on the market before they bought it? Did they even buy it? It was on the property. It was on the market for several years. So it was even dated and not popular when it was on the market in the first place. You know, if they sell it, let's say a couple years later, like 10 years later or something, it's going to be even worse. Pepper and Nutmeg's mom says she'll play a duchess. If I was on that cast, I'd be calling my agent. Probably, but it's a popular show, so... Anyways, guys, obviously we have more coming in, but my throat feels a little tired, and poor Miss Pippa, she needs her dinner. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. There's just going to be so much going on here in the next couple of weeks as we see how all this plays out. But thank you so much for tuning in. We will see what the future holds. A lot's up in the air. I think by the end of the year, I'll have a better sense of how things are going to play out. But you guys let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall speak to you again very soon.